I pushed through the heavy glass doors of Sterling & Co., my heart drumming with that particular mix of excitement and terror that comes with first days. The lobby stretched before me, marble floors, chrome fixtures, and enough natural light to make the whole space feel like a dream. This was it, my fresh start. New city, new job, new version of myself that wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. The receptionist smiled at me, all professional warmth and perfect lipstick. "You must be Eli Carter. Welcome to Sterling & Co." "That's me," I said, trying to match her energy even though my palms were sweating through my dress shirt. "Mr. Hayes is finishing up a meeting. He asked that you wait in his office. Top floor, corner suite. You can't miss it." Mr. Hayes. My new boss. The man who'd interview me over video call. His face just pixels on a screen, professional and distant. I'd researched the company thoroughly but somehow never came across his photo. Weird, but not unheard of in corporate settings where executives valued privacy. I took the elevator up, watching the numbers climb. 37th floor. The doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with glass-walled offices, each one a fishbowl of ambition and exhaustion. His office sat at the end. Double doors slightly ajar. I knocked anyway. No answer. So I stepped inside. The space screamed power floor-to-ceiling windows. Overlooking the city. A desk that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Leather chairs that looked like they'd been imported from Italy. Everything was pristine, organized, controlled. I stood there awkwardly, offer letter clutched in my hand like a lifeline, wondering if I should sit or stand or maybe just combust from nerves. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Sorry for the delay. Meeting ran long." The voice hit me first. Smooth, confident, with that particular cadence that made every word sound deliberate. My entire body went rigid because I knew that voice. I'd heard it whisper promises in the dark, laugh at stupid jokes, break when it said goodbye. I turned around slowly, praying I was wrong, praying this was some cosmic joke. But there he was. Caden Hayes, my ex-boyfriend. The man who'd shattered my heart 2 years ago and left me picking up pieces I'm still not sure I found. Standing there in a tailored navy suit, hair perfectly styled, those gray eyes that used to look at me with softness now cold and assessing. My breath stopped. The room tilted. "No," I whispered. "No, this can't, Eli." He said my name like a statement of fact, not a greeting. Like he'd been expecting this. Like he'd known all along. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and bolt, to get as far away from this man as possible. But my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in the nightmare of standing 3 feet away from the person I'd spent 2 years trying to forget. Caden walked past me, moving to his desk with the kind of ease that came from owning a space. He set down his tablet, adjusted his cufflinks, and then finally looked at me properly. Really looked at me, and in that gaze I saw everything: recognition, calculation, and something darker I couldn't name. "I see you got my offer," he said, nodding toward the letter trembling in my hand. "You knew." My voice came out strangled. "You knew it was me when you hired me." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Of course I knew. You think I don't remember your resume? Your portfolio? The way you write cover letters like you're apologizing for existing?" The jab hit harder than it should have. He used to love how I wrote, used to say I had a gift for making complicated things sound simple. Now he weaponized it. "This is insane," I said, finding my voice even as my hands shook. "I can't work here. I can't work for you." "Why not?" He leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms. The posture was casual but his eyes were anything but. "You need this job. Your last position ended 6 months ago. You've been applying everywhere. This is the only offer you've gotten that matches your skill set and salary requirements." How did he know all that? Had he been keeping tabs on me? "That doesn't mean you'll work here, Eli." His voice dropped lower, more commanding. "You'll come in Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. You'll attend meetings, prepare presentations, interface with clients. You'll do exactly what I hired you to do. And if I quit right now," I challenged even though we both knew I wouldn't. "Couldn't." Caden pushed off the desk and walked toward me. Each step deliberate, measured, until he stood close enough that I could smell his cologne. Different from what he used to wear. More expensive, more mature. Everything about him had upgraded except apparently his capacity for cruelty. "If you walk out that door," he said quietly, "I'll make sure every company in this city knows you breached a contract. I'll ensure your professional reputation is so damaged, you'll be lucky to get hired at a coffee shop." My jaw clenched. "You wouldn't try me." We stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills I was terrified to lose. His eyes hadn't changed. Still gray, still intense, but now they held no warmth. Just authority, just control. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, hating how my voice cracked. "Why bring me here if you hate me so much?" Something flickered across his face. For just a second the mask slipped, and I saw something raw underneath. But then it was gone, replaced by that cool, corporate exterior. "Hate you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Eli, if I hated you, I wouldn't have bothered. No, this is much simpler. You're good at what you do and I need someone I can rely on. Someone I can keep close." Keep close. The words sent a chill down my spine. "Your first task starts tomorrow," Caden continued, moving back behind his desk like this conversation was just another business transaction. 8 a.m. sharp. We have a client presentation at 10, and I want you prepped and ready. Dress code is business formal. Don't be late." "Caden, that's Mr. Hayes during office hours." He picked up his tablet, effectively dismissing me. "HR will handle your paperwork. See yourself out." I stood there for another moment, frozen between disbelief and rising panic. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But the cold air conditioning, the sound of traffic 37 floors below, the way my heart hammered against my ribs, it was all too real. I walked to the door on shaking legs, each step feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. "Eli." I stopped, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. "Welcome to Sterling & Co." His voice was soft, almost gentle, and somehow that made it so much worse. "I think you're going to find working here very educational." I left without responding, because what could I possibly say? The elevator ride down felt like falling. By the time I hit the lobby, I was gasping for air, stumbling out onto the street where the afternoon sun felt too bright, the noise too loud. I'd walked into that building thinking I was starting over. Instead, I just walked straight into a trap. And Caden Hayes, the man who once held my heart, now held every single piece of my future in his perfectly manicured hands. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caden's face, that cold smile, those calculating eyes, the way he'd looked at me like I was a chess piece instead of a person he'd once claimed to love. I must have replayed our conversation 100 times, searching for some crack in his armor, some hint that the boy I'd loved was still in there somewhere. By morning, I'd convinced myself of two things. One, I had no choice but to show up, and two, I wouldn't let him break me. Not again. Sterling & Co.'s lobby felt different on my official first day. Less dreamlike, more like a cage. I checked in with security, got my employee badge with its unflattering photo, and took the elevator up with a knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing floor. I'd barely set my bag down at my new desk, situated conveniently right outside Caden's office, because of course it was, when my phone buzzed. My office. "Now." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to type back something sharp, something that would remind him I wasn't some subordinate he could just order around. But that would be a lie, wouldn't it? That's exactly what I was now. I knocked on his door frame. He was on a phone call but gestured me in with a wave that somehow managed to be both casual and commanding. I stepped inside, keeping my distance, watching as he wrapped up his conversation with practiced efficiency. "Yes. I understand. We'll have the revised proposal to you by Friday." "Absolutely. Thank you, Richard." He ended the call and set his phone down, finally giving me his full attention. Closed the door. My hand hesitated on the handle. Being alone with him felt dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with professionalism. "It's a glass door, Eli. The entire office can see us. Close it so we can talk without the whole floor eavesdropping." He had a point. I closed it, then stood there awkwardly, unsure if I should sit or remain standing or maybe just melt into the floor. Sit. It wasn't a request. I took the chair across from his desk, the same spot I'd stood yesterday when my world imploded. The leather was cold even through my slacks. Caden laced his fingers together, elbows on the desk, in that classic power pose that executives probably practiced in mirrors. Here's how this is going to work. You report directly to me. Every project crosses my desk before it goes to clients. Every meeting I want you there taking notes, observing, learning. Learning what exactly? I couldn't help asking. How to be indispensable. His eyes locked onto mine. You're talented, Eli. You always were. But talent without strategy is just wasted potential. I'm going to teach you how to navigate this world, how to read people, how to close deals. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be the best in the industry. It sounded almost generous, except for the part where it came wrapped in control and manipulation. And what do you get out of this arrangement? I asked, proud of how steady my voice sounded. His smile was slow, deliberate. I get the satisfaction of knowing you're exactly where I want you. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Before I could respond, he stood up and grabbed his suit jacket from the back of his chair. We have a meeting in conference room B in 15 minutes. The Reynolds account, they're considering taking their business elsewhere. Your job is to observe and not speak, unless I specifically ask you a question. Understood? I'm just supposed to sit there silently? For now, yes. You need to understand the dynamics before you participate. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Eli? That shirt. I glanced down at my light blue button-up. What about it? It's wrinkled. Tomorrow I expect you to look like you actually care about first impressions. Details matter in this business. Heat flooded my face, embarrassment mixed with anger. I pressed this morning. Not well enough. He opened the door, dismissing my protest. Conference room. 14 minutes now. He walked out, leaving me sitting there fuming. The Caden I dated used to compliment everything I wore. Used to say I looked good in whatever I threw on. This version criticized and controlled and made me feel small. I forced myself to stand, smooth down my apparently offensive shirt, and follow him. The meeting was brutal. Not because of the clients, they were actually pleasant if demanding, but because I could feel Caden's presence like a weight pressing down on me the entire time. He was brilliant in action, I had to admit. The way he navigated their concerns, pivoted their objections into opportunities, read the room with surgical precision. This was what he'd been working toward for 2 years. This level of power and competence. I took notes like he'd instructed, watching the dance of negotiation and hating that I was actually learning something. When the clients left, satisfied with Caden's promises, I started gathering my things. Stay. I looked up. The conference room was empty now, just us and the lingering smell of expensive coffee. Caden loosened his tie slightly, the first crack in his perfectly curated appearance. What did you observe? About what? The meeting. The clients. What did you learn? It felt like a test. Everything with him felt like a test now. Mrs. Reynolds makes the final decisions, even though her husband does most of the talking. You directed your strongest points to her. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. Good. What else? They're not actually considering leaving. They just wanted leverage for better terms. And did I give it to them? You made them think you did, but you actually negotiated better terms for us. Caden leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. You always were observant. That's what I liked about you. Liked. Past tense. The word stung more than it should have. Why are you really doing this, Caden? I asked, setting down my notepad. This whole thing, hiring me, forcing me to work for you, keeping me close. What's the endgame? He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood up and walked around the table until he was standing right in front of me. Too close. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You want to know the truth? His voice dropped lower, more intimate despite the corporate setting. 2 years ago, you walked away from me without looking back. Do you have any idea what that did to me? You broke up with me, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Because you were pulling away. Because I could feel you leaving before you actually left. I just expedited the inevitable. That's not. Don't. He cut me off, his hand coming up to grip the back of my chair, caging me in without actually touching me. Don't rewrite history, Eli. You were already gone. I just let you go. My throat tightened. Was that how he remembered it? Had I really been that distant? So this is what? Revenge? I asked. His laugh was bitter. Revenge would be easy. This is something else entirely. This is me making sure that this time, you don't get to just walk away. This time I control the narrative. I decide when and how we end. The possessiveness in his voice sent conflicting signals through my body. Fear and something else I didn't want to name. You can't just own people, I said, trying to sound firm. Can't I? He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. You signed a contract, Eli. You're mine for the next 12 months. Minimum. And I intend to make every single day count. He pulled back, straightening his tie and grabbing his tablet like he hadn't just delivered a threat disguised as a promise. Back to work. I need the Reynolds follow-up drafted by end of day. He walked toward the door, then paused. And Eli? Tomorrow wear something that doesn't look like you slept in it. Standards exist for a reason. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone in the conference room with my racing heart and the terrible realization that I was in far deeper than I'd thought. This wasn't just about a job. This was about unfinished business, unresolved feelings, and a man who apparently believed that the best way to deal with heartbreak was to orchestrate a do-over where he held all the cards. And the worst part? Some small, traitorous part of me wondered what it would be like to let him. 2 weeks crawled by like months. Each day fell into a rhythm that felt both surreal and suffocating. Caden's constant demands, his impossible standards, the way he'd look at me sometimes like he was searching for something he'd lost. I learned quickly that he ran his department with precision that bordered on obsession. Every detail mattered. Every interaction was calculated. But there were moments, brief, fleeting moments, when I'd catch him staring at me with an expression that didn't quite match the corporate tyrant persona. Moments when his voice would soften just slightly before he'd catch himself and correct course. Moments that made me wonder if the Caden I'd loved was buried somewhere under all that expensive wool and calculated coldness. Friday evening, the office had emptied out early. Some company happy hour downtown that I'd deliberately skipped. The thought of watching Caden charm colleagues and clients while maintaining this icy distance with me felt like torture. I didn't need, so I stayed at my desk, organizing files and pretending I didn't feel pathetic for spending my Friday night at work. I was deep in spreadsheet hell when I heard his office door open. I didn't look up, just kept typing, hoping he'd walk past without comment. You're still here? So much for that hope. Just finishing the Morrison analysis, I said, eyes on my screen. You wanted it Monday morning, so it's 7:30 on a Friday. There was something off in his voice, something less sharp than usual. I finally looked up and immediately wished I hadn't. He looked wrecked in the best way, tie loosened and hanging crooked, top button undone, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms I was definitely not supposed to notice. His hair, usually immaculately styled, had that tousled look that came from running fingers through it too many times. He looked human, exhausted, real. I could say the same to you, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. He walked over to my desk, and instead of looming over me like he usually did, he just leaned against the edge, casual, almost relaxed, like we were colleagues instead of whatever complicated mess we'd become. I've been going through the quarterly projections. He rubbed his face with both hands. The numbers aren't adding up the way they should. Budget meeting next week? I guess, yeah. Henderson's going to tear apart the marketing spend, and I need to justify every line item. He sighed, and the sound was so unguarded it made my chest ache. Sometimes I miss when the biggest stress in my life was passing organic chemistry. The reference to college hung between us, that shared history we both kept carefully locked away. Back when we'd study together at the library until they kicked us out, when Caden would fall asleep with his head on my shoulder and I'd quiz him on molecular structures. You passed, I said quietly, with a B+ if I remember correctly. His eyes found mine and something shifted in his expression, softened. You remember that? Of course I remembered. I remembered everything about those years. Every late-night conversation, every lazy Sunday morning, every moment before it all fell apart. But admitting that felt dangerous. Lucky guess, I lied. Caden huffed a small laugh that sounded almost genuine. Then, to my absolute shock, he pushed off my desk and collapsed into the empty chair next to mine. The one meant for collaborative work, not for executives fraternizing with their staff. Can I tell you something? He asked, staring at the ceiling tiles. Is that a requirement or an actual question? Actual question. I saved my work and turned to face him properly. Okay, sure. He was quiet for a long moment, and I watched him struggle with whatever he wanted to say. His jaw worked, his fingers drummed against the armrest, and that familiar crease appeared between his eyebrows that always showed up when he was thinking too hard. I don't know what I'm doing, he finally admitted. With you. This whole situation. I thought I had a plan. Thought I knew exactly how this would go. But every day you're here, it gets more complicated. My heart rate picked up. Complicated how? Just complicated. He turned his head to look at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes was almost painful to witness. Do you hate me? For bringing you here? For the way I've been acting? The question caught me off guard, because it suggested he cared about the answer. That somewhere under the demands and power plays, my opinion of him still mattered. I don't hate you, I said honestly. I'm angry. Yeah. Confused. Frustrated. But hate? No. Why not? You should. Because hating you would be easier than this. The words came out before I could stop them. And nothing about us has ever been easy. Caden sat up straighter, turning his chair to face mine fully. We were close now, knees almost touching, existing in this bubble of honesty that felt fragile and temporary. I screwed up, he said. 2 years ago. The way I ended things. The things I said. I've replayed that conversation 1,000 times, and every version ends with me being a coward. You were scared, I said, because I'd had 2 years to analyze what happened. We both were. We were 23 and talking about futures we weren't ready for. You were ready, I was the one who panicked. And now? I asked. What's different now? He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched my hand where it rested on my knee. Just his fingers over mine, tentative and warm. Now I'm not the scared kid who didn't know what he wanted. Now I know exactly what I lost. My breath caught. The touch was electric, familiar and foreign all at once. I should pull away. This was my boss, my ex, the man who'd spent 2 weeks making my life deliberately difficult. But I didn't move. Caden, I know I don't deserve another chance, he continued, his thumb tracing small circles on my knuckles. I know I've been awful to you. Cold. Controlling. All the things I swore I'd never be. But having you close and not being able to, it's killing me. Eli. The raw honesty in his voice made something crack open in my chest. Then why treat me that way? Why the power games and the criticism and the... 'Cause it's easier than admitting I never stopped caring. His grip on my hand tightened. Because if I let myself be soft with you, be real with you, I'm terrified you'll leave again, and this time it'll actually destroy me. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Outside the windows, the city lights flickered like stars, and in the empty office we existed in our own universe. I didn't leave, I said softly. You pushed me away. I know. God, I know. He brought my hand up, pressed it against his chest where I could feel his heart racing. And I've regretted it every single day since. This was dangerous territory. Every alarm in my head was screaming at me to pull back, to remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But my body remembered his touch. My heart remembered what it felt like to be wanted by him. And my stupid traitorous hope whispered that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to something real. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes searched mine. A chance to do better. To be better. To show you that the man I've become is someone worth trusting again. By keeping me trapped here, by manipulating my career, he flinched. I handled this all wrong. I see that now. When I saw your application come through, I saw an opportunity to have you back in my life, and I took it without thinking about what you needed or wanted. That was selfish. Was. I raised an eyebrow. Is currently actively being selfish. A small self-deprecating smile tugged at his lips. I'm working on it. Despite everything, the confusion, the anger, the hurt, I found myself almost smiling back. You're really bad at this. At what? Apologizing. Being vulnerable. Not being a controlling workaholic. Yeah, well, he squeezed my hand gently. I had a good teacher once. Someone who used to call me out on my bullshit with remarkable accuracy. I should have listened better. The reference to our past relationship hung between us, bittersweet and complicated. We'd been good together once. Really good. Before the fear and miscommunication and pride had torn everything apart. I can't promise to forgive you, I said carefully. Not yet. Not until I see actual change. Not just pretty words in an empty office. Fair. He nodded, accepting the boundary. What if I started by asking instead of demanding? What if I treated you like a colleague instead of a possession? That would be a start. And what if... He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. What if I asked you to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not a client dinner, just us. Actually talking, actually trying to figure out if there's anything left worth saving. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a line we couldn't uncross. Once we stepped outside the office, once we blurred that boundary, everything would change. Again. I don't know if that's a good idea, I admitted. Probably isn't, he agreed. Most things worth doing aren't. I stared at our joined hands, at the way his thumb still traced those gentle circles, at the vulnerability he was showing me that I'd never expected to see again. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe this would end with both of us more broken than before. But maybe, just maybe, there was something here worth exploring. One dinner, I finally said. Casual, Dutch pay. And if you're even slightly the cold boss version of yourself, I'm out. His smile was real this time, reaching his eyes in a way that made my stomach flip. Deal. I know a place that makes the best ramen. Cash only, no corporate cards allowed. You remember? I remember everything. Eli. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. That's the problem. We sat there for another moment, neither of us wanting to break the spell. But eventually, reality crept back in. The late hour, the empty office, the complicated mess we were potentially walking into. Caden released my hand slowly, standing up and offering me a small, genuine smile. Go home. Get some rest. The Morrison analysis can wait until Monday. But you said, I say a lot of things. He grabbed his jacket from his office. Consider this your first experience with the new, slightly less tyrannical boss approach. I couldn't help but laugh, surprising both of us. I'll believe it when I see it. Fair. He paused at the elevator, looking back at me. 7 tomorrow? I'll text you the address? Okay, I agreed, wondering what the hell I'd just signed up for. The elevator doors closed, and I was alone in the quiet office. I should have felt anxious, should have been second-guessing everything. Instead, for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something like hope. Maybe we were both broken. Maybe this was the worst idea either of us had ever had. But maybe, just maybe, broken things could be rebuilt stronger than before. I packed up my stuff and headed home, my phone already buzzing with a text from Caden. Thank you for saying yes. Sleep well. Simple. No pressure. Almost sweet. Yeah, I was definitely in trouble. But for the first time it felt like the kind of trouble that might actually be worth it. Saturday morning arrived with sunlight streaming through my apartment windows and anxiety churning in my stomach. The ramen dinner. Tonight. With Caden. My ex. My boss. The man who'd occupied every corner of my thoughts for the past 3 weeks. I spent an embarrassing amount of time picking out what to wear, eventually settling on dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, because this wasn't a date, just two people trying to have a civilized conversation. At least that's what I kept telling myself as I checked my reflection for the 7th time. My phone buzzed at 6:30, running a few minutes behind. Meet you there at 7:15. Address 847, Morrison Street. The casual sign-off, just his initial, felt strangely intimate. Like we were friends. Like the past 3 weeks of professional coldness had been some elaborate fever dream. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early, because apparently old habits die hard. The place was tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop, the kind of hole-in-the-wall spot that tourists never found. String lights hung across the entrance, and through the window I could see mismatched furniture and walls covered in Polaroid photos. You found it. I turned to see Caden approaching, and my breath caught. He looked completely different. Worn jeans, a navy Henley, leather jacket slung over one arm. His hair was unstyled, falling naturally across his forehead. This was college Caden. The version I'd fallen for before suits and corner offices had transformed him into someone I barely recognized. It's not exactly hidden, I managed, trying to ignore how my heart rate had accelerated. His smile was soft, almost shy. No, but it's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. He held the door open. Come on. I already called ahead. The interior was even cozier than it appeared from outside. Warm lighting, the smell of garlic and ginger, a soundtrack of indie music playing just loud enough to create atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. The hostess greeted Caden by name and led us to a corner booth. You're a regular here? I asked as we slid into opposite sides. Used to be. Back when I first moved to the city. He picked up a menu even though he clearly didn't need it. Haven't been in a while though. Got too busy with work, I guess. There was something melancholy in the admission, like he was acknowledging all the small joys he'd sacrificed for success. I wondered how many other things he'd given up. If I'd been one of them. We ordered spicy miso ramen for me, tonkatsu for him, plus gyoza to share, because some things were muscle memory. The conversation started carefully, skating around dangerous topics. Work, the city, a new coffee shop that had opened downtown. Safe territory. But then our food arrived and Caden set down his chopsticks after the first bite, looking at me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. I need to apologize, he said. Properly, not the half-assed version I gave you in the office. I put down my spoon, giving him my full attention. When we broke up 2 years ago, I told myself I was doing the right thing. That we were too young, too unprepared for the kind of serious relationship we were heading toward. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered well. But the truth is, I was just terrified. You were becoming the most important person in my world. And that scared the hell out of me. So you ended it, I said quietly. So I sabotaged it, he corrected. I picked fights over nothing, made you feel like you couldn't do anything right, pushed you away before you could realize I wasn't worth staying for. His voice cracked slightly, and then when you finally left, I convinced myself it proved I'd been right to be scared. My throat tightened, hearing him lay it out like that, acknowledging the patterns I'd spent months in therapy trying to understand, felt like vindication and heartbreak all at once. Do you know what the worst part was? I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. It wasn't the breakup itself. It was the month leading up to it, watching you become someone cold and distant, wondering what I'd done wrong, wondering if I'd ever really known you at all. Caden flinched like I'd struck him. You didn't do anything wrong. God. Eli, you were perfect. That was the problem. You deserved someone who wasn't constantly sabotaging his own happiness out of fear. And now? I challenged. Are you still that person? He was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. I'd like to think I've grown. Therapy helped. So did realizing that running from things that matter doesn't actually make you brave. It just makes you alone. His eyes met mine. But I'm not going to sit here and promise I'm completely fixed. I still have control issues. I still panic when things feel too good, like they're about to be taken away. I'm working on it, but it's a process. The honesty was disarming. This wasn't the polished corporate version of Caden who had every answer perfectly rehearsed. This was someone genuinely trying to be better, admitting he hadn't quite figured it out yet. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. But Caden, you can't just hire me, force me to work under you and then expect everything to— I know. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. That was manipulative and wrong, and I'm sorry. If you want to transfer departments or find a different position in the company, I'll make it happen. No retaliation, no blacklisting. I promise. The offer hung between us, genuine and unexpected. He was giving me an out, removing the leverage he'd held over me. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like loss. What if I don't want to transfer? I heard myself say. His eyes widened slightly. Then you stay. But I need you to know it's your choice. Not because you're trapped. Not because you feel obligated. Because you actually want to be there. I took a shaky breath, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in my chest. I don't know what I want yet. This is all still so confusing. That's fair. He reached across the table, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. Can I tell you what I want? My hand moved almost without conscious thought. Fingers brushing his, the contact sent electricity up my arm. Okay, I want the chance to prove I can be someone you trust again. Not your boss. Not the guy who broke your heart, just Caden. The person who remembers that you always order extra gyoza. Because you never think the serving is enough. Who knows you stress clean when you're anxious? Who thinks the way you explain complicated concepts is the most beautiful thing he's ever heard? Tears pricked at my eyes because he did remember. All of it, the small details that made up who I was. I want that too, I whispered. But I'm scared. Me too. His thumb traced circles on my knuckles. But maybe being scared together is better than being safe and alone. We finished our ramen in a different kind of silence. Comfortable, contemplative, full of possibility. And when Caden insisted on paying despite my protests. When he walked me to my car and hesitated before saying goodnight. When his hand lingered on my shoulder for just a moment too long. I felt something shift. Maybe we couldn't go back to who we were. Maybe that version of us was gone forever. Buried under hurt and time and distance. But maybe we could build something new. Something stronger for having been broken first. Same time next week? Caden asked, hands in his pockets, looking almost vulnerable in the streetlight. I smiled despite myself. Text me the details. His answering grin was worth every ounce of risk. It's a date. As I drove home, I couldn't stop replaying the evening. The honesty, the vulnerability, the way it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were finding our way back to each other. I was still terrified, still uncertain, still nursing wounds that hadn't fully healed. But for the first time in 2 years, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt hope. The week following our dinner passed in a strange new rhythm. Caden was different at work. Still professional, still exacting in his standards, but without the sharp edges that had defined our first few weeks. He said please and thank you. He asked for my opinion instead of just issuing orders. He smiled at me in meetings and it reached his eyes. People noticed. So you and Hayes seem chummy now. My coworker Marcus commented one afternoon, perching on the edge of my desk. What's your secret? I've been here 2 years and he still looks at me like I'm a necessary inconvenience. I kept my eyes on my screen. No secret. Just doing my job. Right. Marcus didn't sound convinced. And the fact that he specifically requested you for the Singapore project has nothing to do with anything? My fingers froze on the keyboard. He what? Oh, you didn't know? Marcus grinned. Yeah. Big announcement this morning. Hayes is leading a team to pitch our expansion strategy to potential investors in Singapore next month. 3-day trip. And you're his +1. My stomach dropped. Caden hadn't mentioned anything about international travel, let alone 3 days in a foreign country. Together, away from the safety of office boundaries and professional distance. I found him in his office 20 minutes later, door open, focused on his laptop with that small crease between his eyebrows that appeared when he was concentrating. Singapore? I said without preamble. He looked up and guilt flashed across his features. You heard from Marcus. Not from you. I crossed my arms. Were you planning to mention it, or was I supposed to just show up at the airport? Caden sighed and closed his laptop. I was going to tell you today. I just got the final approval this morning. And you picked me for the team because you're the best person for the job, he said firmly. Your market analysis on the Asian expansion has been brilliant. You understand the cultural nuances that our other analysts miss. This isn't favoritism, Eli. This is strategy. I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in around the edges. Or it's a convenient way to get me alone for 3 days. His jaw tightened. If you think I'm using work to manipulate you into something you're not ready for, then you don't know me as well as I thought. I don't know you anymore. I shot back. That's the problem. 2 years is a long time, Caden. People change. Priorities change. My feelings haven't changed. The words were quiet but intense. And yes, I want to spend time with you. Yes, I'm hoping that maybe in Singapore, away from all this, he gestured around the office, we can just be ourselves. But if that's too much, if you're not ready, I'll assign someone else. Just say the word. I stood there, torn between self-preservation and the traitorous part of me that wanted exactly what he was offering. Time together. Space to figure out if what we'd had was still there, buried under all the hurt. I'll go, I heard myself say. For the job? Not because of anything else. His expression softened. Understood. That night I stayed late finishing the preliminary research for the Singapore pitch. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of the cleaning crew. I was deep in data about market trends when I felt someone behind me. Caden stood there with 2 cups of coffee, looking as tired as I felt. Thought you could use this. I accepted the cup gratefully. Black, 1 sugar. Exactly how I liked it. Of course he remembered. He pulled up a chair beside me, not behind the desk in his usual position of authority, but next to me. Equals. Partners. Can I help? With what? The research. It's a lot to do alone. He nodded at my screen full of charts and projections. I'm the one who created this workload. Least I can do is help shoulder it. So we worked, side by side in the quiet office, sharing observations and insights, falling into an easy collaboration that reminded me of late-night study sessions in college. At some point, Caden rolled up his sleeves. At another, I kicked off my shoes under the desk. The professional distance we'd carefully maintained started to dissolve. You're doing that thing, Caden said suddenly. I looked up from the spreadsheet. What thing? That little tongue between your teeth thing when you're concentrating really hard. His smile was fond, nostalgic. You used to do it all the time when we studied together. Heat crept up my neck. You do. It's cute. The word hung between us. Too intimate for the setting. I should have deflected, made a joke, re-established the boundaries. Instead, I found myself looking at him, really looking, and seeing all the small details I'd tried so hard to ignore. The way his hair fell when he wasn't constantly pushing it back. The faint scar on his chin from a skateboarding accident in high school. The genuine warmth in his eyes when he looked at me. Caden, I started, not sure what I was going to say. I miss this, he interrupted softly. Just being with you. Talking about nothing. Working on something together. All the small moments I took for granted. My chest tightened. We can't go back. I know. He turned his chair to face me fully. But what if we could go forward? Build something new instead of trying to resurrect something dead. What does that even look like? I asked. You're still my boss. There are professional boundaries, power dynamics. Then I'll talk to HR about reassignment. I'll make sure there's no conflict of interest. He was completely serious. If that's what it takes to do this right, I'll do it. The offer was staggering. His position, his authority, his carefully constructed professional identity. He'd adjust all of it. For me, for us. Why? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Why go through all this trouble? Caden reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was achingly familiar. Because the alternative is pretending I don't feel what I feel. And I've tried that. It doesn't work. I'd rather risk everything for a real chance with you than play it safe and spend the rest of my life wondering what if. My breath caught. His hand was still near my face, hovering, and I found myself leaning into the touch before I could think better of it. His palm cupped my cheek, warm and solid, and Tell me you don't feel it too, he murmured. Tell me I'm alone in this and I'll back off. I'll be nothing but professional. But if there's even a chance, I kissed him. Or he kissed me. I wasn't sure who moved first, only that suddenly his lips were on mine and 2 years of distance collapsed into nothing. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. Then his hand slid into my hair and I gripped his shirt, and it deepened into something desperate and real. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caden rested his forehead against mine. Tell me that wasn't just me. That wasn't just you, I admitted, my voice shaky. We sat there in the quiet office, hands intertwined, trying to process what we'd just done. I should have felt guilty or confused or worried about the implications. Instead, I just felt right. Like maybe some things were worth the risk. Singapore, Caden said eventually. Let's get through Singapore. Figure out if this us can actually work outside the bubble we're in right now. I nodded, even though fear still coiled in my stomach. And if it doesn't, then at least we tried. He pressed a kiss to my temple, soft and sweet. But I have a feeling it will. As I drove home that night, my lips still tingling from his kiss, I realized I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Whatever happened next would change everything. But maybe that's exactly what we needed. Singapore was a blur of presentations, business dinners, and too little sleep. But it was also something else entirely. Away from the office, from prying eyes and professional expectations, Caden and I found ourselves slipping into something that felt dangerously close to what we'd once had. Our last night there. After the final investor meeting had gone better than expected, the team decided to celebrate. But by 11 I was exhausted, social battery completely drained. I slipped away to the hotel rooftop, needing air and silence. The city spread out below me, a constellation of lights and life. The warm breeze carried the scent of jasmine from somewhere, and for the first time all week, I could breathe. Knew I'd find you here. I didn't turn around. How did you know? Caden came to stand beside me, leaning against the railing. Because you always need space to decompress after big social events. And you always choose height when you need perspective. The accuracy of his observation made my chest ache. Stop knowing me so well. Can't help it. His shoulder brushed mine. It's involuntary at this point. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. This was the most relaxed I'd seen him all week. Tie-gone sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy from the humidity. Thank you, he said suddenly. For this week. For the work you put in. The way you handled the investors. You were incredible. Just doing what you hired me for. No. He turned to face me. You went above and beyond. That pitch modification you suggested during the TAN meeting? Brilliant. You read the room perfectly and adjusted on the fly. That's not something I taught you. That's all you. The praise warmed me more than it should have. Well, I had a good example to follow. His smile was soft. We make a good team. We do, I admitted. And it was true. This week had proven that whatever personal complications existed between us, professionally we were electric. We anticipate each other's thoughts, balanced each other's weaknesses, elevated each other's strengths. Eli. His voice changed, became more serious. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. My heart rate picked up. Okay, do you think there's a future here? For us? He gestured between us. Not the work us, the real us. Because I need to know if I'm chasing something that only exists in my head or if you feel it too. I turned to face him fully, my back against the railing. The question deserved honesty, even if the truth was complicated. I feel it. God help me. I've been trying not to, but I do. Relief flooded his features. Then what's holding you back? Fear, I said simply. Fear that we'll fall into the same patterns. Fear that this time when it breaks, I won't survive it. Fear that I'm setting myself up for the exact same heartbreak I spent 2 years recovering from. Caden stepped closer, not touching but near enough that I could feel his warmth. What if I told you I'm just as terrified? That every time I look at you, I'm scared I'll mess this S again. Then I'd say we're both idiots for even considering this. He laughed, surprised and genuine. Probably. But what if being idiots together is better than being smart and alone? I thought about the past month. The late nights working side by side. The way he brought me coffee without being asked. How he'd started leaving little notes on my desk. Nothing romantic, just small reminders or words of encouragement. The way my heart jumped every time I saw him. How natural it felt to be near him, despite everything that had happened. I can't promise I won't mess up, Caden continued. I can't promise it'll be easy or that I've magically fixed all my issues. But I can promise I'll try. Every single day, I'll try to be better, to communicate instead of shutting down, to fight for us instead of running away. Tears pricked at my eyes because I could hear the sincerity in every word. And what happens when things get hard? When the fear creeps in and old patterns try to resurface. Then we face them together. He finally closed the distance between us, hands gentle on my waist. No more running. No more sabotage. Just honest conversation and the commitment to work through it. I looked up at him, this man who'd broken my heart and was now asking me to trust him with the pieces again. It was insane. Reckless. Completely illogical. One condition, I said. Anything. Complete honesty. No games, no manipulation. No trying to control the situation when you get scared. If you're feeling something, you tell me. If I'm doing something that concerns you, you say it. We talk. Always. Even when it's hard. Deal. His thumb traced circles on my hip, a gesture so familiar it hurt. Anything else? If we do this, we do it right. I won't be your secret. I won't hide what we are because it's professionally inconvenient. I don't want you to be my secret, he said firmly. We'll talk to HR, make sure everything's above board. Whatever it takes to do this ethically. I searched his face, looking for any hint of doubt or deception. But all I saw was hope, vulnerability, and something that looked a lot like love. Okay? I whispered. Let's try. His smile could have lit up the entire city. Yeah? Yeah. And then I was kissing him, or he was kissing me, and it didn't matter because it felt right. His hands tightened on my waist, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around his neck, letting myself fall into the moment without fear or reservation. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caden rested his forehead against mine. I love you. I know it's too soon to say it again. I know we're just starting over, but I need you to know. I never stopped. I know, I said, because I could feel it in every touch, every look, every small gesture he'd made over the past month. I never stopped either. We stayed on that rooftop until the early hours of morning, talking about everything and nothing, making plans and promises, building the foundation for something new. And when we finally went back to our separate rooms, it was with the understanding that everything had changed. Monday morning, back at the office, we met with HR. By Tuesday, I was being transferred to a different department with a promotion to match my new responsibilities. By Wednesday, the office gossip mill was buzzing with speculation about why Caden Hayes seemed happier than anyone had ever seen him. And by Friday, when he picked me up for our first official date, dinner at a Thai place he'd researched specifically because he remembered it was my favorite cuisine, I realized something important. We weren't the same people who'd fallen apart 2 years ago. We'd both grown, changed, learned hard lessons about communication and trust, and the courage it takes to fight for something real. This version of us was stronger, wiser, built on honesty instead of assumptions, and this time I believed we might actually make it.